Om. 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 Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Parthoda, will you do the invocation, please?
पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमणिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामितवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भगवद्वेषिणीम् नमस्तुते वैशविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन तया भारततैलपूर्णप्रज्वालितज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषद्गावदग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थवत्स सुधीर्भुक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् भीष्मद्रोणतटजयद्रथजला गन्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन बिलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनवर्तिनी क्षत्तिर्ना खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तककेशवः पराशर्यवत्सर्यं मलम् गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटम् नानक्षणकेशरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनबोधितम् लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहोरः पेप्यमानं मुदा भुवद्भारतपङ्कजं कुलिमल प्रदंशिन श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुत तुन्नन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषद्गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानवस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यशन्तं न विदुषुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः।
So, we are in chapter 10. And the chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga, Gurudev used to call this the chapter of one in many. One in many. So in the last shloka in 36, where we had stopped, he had said, Dyutam chalayatasmi, Dyutam. Now, if you'd ask today, the young child of today, or anybody of the new generation, they don't even understand the game of dice. But dice was a very, very prevalent game in the ancient times. And he's using this word of dice because of a very interesting correlation. Arjuna obviously understands the power of dice. So whether he has understood the power of any other form of gambling or not, he understands the power of dice because he is in that situation today, facing two armies because of that game of dice, right? So the power of dice, where there is power, I am over there. That is the whole story of chapter 10. Then he said, Tejas, Tejasvinam aham jyotis, jayosmi vyavasayosmi, sattvam sattvavatam aham. Then in 37, he uses an interesting trick here. Vrishninam vasudevosmi. Vrishninam vasudevosmi. Pandavanam Dhananjayah, Pandavanam Dhananjayah, Vrishinam Vasudevosmi, Pandavanam Dhananjayah, Muninamapyaham Vyasah, Muninamapyaham Vyasah, Kavinamushana Kavihi, Kavinamushana Ushana Kavihi, Muninamapyaham Vyasah, Kavinamushana Kavihi, Vrishninam Vasudevosmi, Pandavanam Dhananjayah, Muninamapyaham Vyasah, Kavinamushana Kavihi, Vrishninam. Vrishni is a genealogy of kings starting from Vrishni. Now, if you look at the Vamsha of Krishna, he is called a Chandra Vamshi, unlike Ramachandra, who is called a Surya Vamshi. Now, if you see how the break happens, Brahma created various rishis, right? Brahma created various rishis. Of those rishis, one of them, called Kashyapa Muni, he gave birth to Aditya. Aditya, also called Surya, also called Vivaswan. Vivaswan gave birth to Vaivasvata Manu. From Vaivasvata Manu came Ikshvaku and so on and so forth till we came to Aja, Dasharath and Ramachandra. This is the genealogy, which is why they are called Surya Vamshi. They all trace back ultimately to Brahma. Everything traces back to Brahma, right? Excepting some weird people who trace their origin not to Brahma but to other deities. For example, my Kula, it traces its genealogy to not to Brahma but to Devi. So we were supposed to have been born much after the creation has happened. So we were born out of Devi's body. She killed Shumba and Nishumba. She went, and after she took rest at a place called Disa, in her 9th form, Siddheshwari, after having attained success. And she sweated. And as she sweated, her sweat, like in Purusha Sukta, the sweat from the head created the Brahmins, the sweat from the arms created the Kshatriyas, the sweat from the torso created the Vaishyas, the sweat from the feet created the Shudras. And we are that clan which comes from Devi. So there are some weird people like this who don't want to be called sons of Brahma or sons of Manu. So, but other than that, everybody traces their origin ultimately to Brahma. Now, Brahma had one more Manasputra called Atri. Atri had a wife called Anasuya. Atri's wife Anasuya was tested by the Trimurti. So the Trimurti came and tested. And in their test, they were transformed into small children because of the power of Anasuya. So Shiva got transformed into Durvasa. Brahma got transformed into Chandra, Soma. And Vishnu got transformed into Datta. So these three are the children of Atri. Now Soma, that is Chandra. Chandra married a Suryavanshi king called Ila. Ila had a curse that he would transform into a woman for 6 months and transform back into a man for 6 months. When he was a woman, he was called Ila. When he was a man, he was called Ila. So when he was a woman, Ila and Soma gave birth to a child called Buddha. Now this Buddha, there is another Buddha story also. Soma and Tara, the wife of Brihaspati, also gave birth to another Buddha, right? That is in the celestial realm. This is in the human realm, Buddha. Now Buddha gave birth to various kings, of whom ultimately one came called Yadu, from whom the Yadava race comes. Yadu had multiple children, 5 children. One of the branches went on to become the Haihayas. Haihayas, we know, Kartavirya Arjuna, right? Who had to be killed by Parashuram. One more story over there. Now, From Yadu, the line comes down to a particular king called Satyaka, whose son is called Vrishni, whose son is called Devadhimusha. Devadhimusha's son is called Vasudeva. And from Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva is called Vasudeva. Right? This is the genealogy. Now, of all the Vrishnis, I am Vasudeva. Now, this is another very outstanding proof that Krishna is not talking about that body called Krishna. Because if he was, he would not be coming here and praising himself. Right? So, it would be outright flattery or boasting. Because he had an elder brother, Balaram. And if we had gone by the morals or the social standards of that time, then he would have said of the Vrishnis, the best is Balaram. Here when he says, I, Krishna, Vasudeva, is the best. So yes, we will come to you. And similarly he says, of the Pandavas, you are the best. Now, in his exposition in Gurudev's book, he doesn't talk about this too much. But if you have ever had the fortune of attending a Gita Jnana Yagya where he was doing this, he would have a lot of fun about this. So we would have lots of jokes. So he would actually say, of all the people in the Chinmaya mission, Swami Chinmayananda is the best. And everybody would be stunned into silence. You see, if I make such a statement, you can't accept it. Then how do you expect that Krishna will stand over there and say, I am the best? So he's not talking about that body over there. So we would have a lot of fun with that particular shloka. Yes, go ahead, Raghuji.
Yeah. Well, he's saying is Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the son of Vasudeva. Could also be Balarama.
Yeah.
So it's not as if he's not saying it's Balarama.
Yeah. Agreed. I knew you were going there. but then typically, if you look at the way he is, what do you call it, the addressed, Krishna is the only one who is typically called Vasudeva Krishna, whereas Balaram is never called Vasudeva Balaram. Right? So we have to be contextual here. Similarly, the word Dhananjaya could mean anything. Anybody who is the bringer of wealth. And it is not that Bhim or Nakul or Sahadev did not bring wealth. When they went out for the Ashwamedha Yagya, that was done before the Dhrtarashtra, right? When the palace was built of Indraprastha, and then there was an Ashwamedha Yagya, and a Rajasuya Yagya was done. And in that Rajasuya Yagya, the four brothers were sent out in four directions to bring wealth. And all of them brought wealth. It is not that they did not bring wealth. So Dhananjaya could also mean anybody. But again, Dhananjaya is a specific, we normally allege to Arjuna when we say Dhananjaya. And in the entire Gita, the word Dhananjaya for Krishna has been used a number of times. So here he says, Pandavanam, I am Dhananjaya. Then next one again. So, okay, who wrote this? Vyasa Muni. So he says, okay, of all those who are the Munis, those who reflect. Muni, who is Muni? Mauna namasya iti munihi. Right? He who has become Mauna. So those who are reflecting, of them, the best is who? Oh, I am Vyasa. Vyasa is the best. Right? No self-glorification here. Right? Very interestingly, up to that point, if you go by whatever legendary hierarchy we have of time, then before Valmiki's Ramayana was written, everything that was written was typically in mantra form. It was always written in mantra form. Whether it was the Vedas, whether it is the Upanishads, whether it is these, all those have been written only in mantra form. The first deviation from mantra form is Ramayana. But again, they went back to that. It is only after that when Vyasa Muni comes and he starts writing out all the Puranas, is when you find prose coming in. You find prose, not poetry, prose coming in and being written in the prosaic form and literature being written. So, very, very revolutionary at that point of time. Today, we don't understand it that is revolutionary because it is normal for us. But that at that point of time, so he says very clearly that of all those who reflect, and how were the Puranas written? How were these written? They were written out of reflection. They were not written by being visiting something, not itihasa. Itihasa is written by the aitihasika. So Vyasa, when he writes the Mahabharata, he is called a aitihasika. Whereas when Vyasa writes the Puranas, he is called a Muni. He writes them out of reflection. Right? Bhagavad Geeta, after he wrote the Mahabharata, it is said he was feeling dissatisfied. And he said, I haven't written enough about Krishna. Krishna is central to this entire story. But the first time Krishna appears in the Mahabharata, anybody knows? When does Krishna appear in the Mahabharata?
श्लोक नंबर 13.
नहीं. कृष्णा कब अपीयर करते हैं महाभारत में?
जब कर्ण को मारने का समय आता है.
कृष्णा पहली बार प्रवेश लेते हैं महाभारत में ड्यूरिंग द्रौपदी स्वयंवर. Till that point of Draupadi Swayamvar, there is no mention of Krishna at all. After that, there is obviously Krishna coming in, Krishna going out, Krishna coming in, Krishna going out, doing all sorts of things. So, Krishna being central to the whole story, Vyasa wasn't satisfied. So, he wrote another appendix to the Mahabharata. It is called Harivamsha. Harivamsha. Very interesting set of stories of leading up to Krishna's birth and post that. Harivamsha. Then, even then, he was not feeling satisfied. And he was sitting very morose. And that is when Narad Muni appears to him. And he gave him the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he chanted that mantra deeply, and through that reflection, he could write out the entire Srimad Bhagavata Purana. Having written that Srimad Bhagavata Purana, of which the 10th chapter is the entire chapter is of the Leelas of Krishna. Right? Portions of Ramayana also appear over there. Portions of what will happen after Krishna also is written over there, and so on and so forth. But it was a Purana. Coming from where? From reflection, having attained a siddhi of a particular mantra. Having stilled the mind to see the Leelas of Vishnu. So, Muninam Apyaham Vyasaha. I am Vyasa. And then he says, of all the Kavis, I am Ushana. Ushana is a very, so, you see, there is a, there is, I don't know how Ushana has been correlated to Shukracharya. But somehow or the other, there are commentators on various scriptures who have, out of the blue, correlated Ushana to Shukracharya, which is okay, nothing wrong with it. It is they must have arrived at that conclusion in some way or the other. Ushana has been there is a reference to Ushana, Kavya Ushana. Kavya Ushana. Kavya comes from the son of Kavi. Right? Son of Kavi. Kavya Ushana. So, Kavi, the word Kavi is actually addressed to Brahma. Right? If you look at the earlier shloka in chapter 7, Kavim Kavinam, right? So over there we said creator. Kavi is the person who can imagine things into existence. So the person who is imagining things into existence is Brahma. So Kavya means he who traces his roots to Brahma. So Kavya Ushana. in the Rig Veda, there are references to him as the deity who takes the cows to Swarga. Indra wins the cows, having fought against Vritra. Now, Vritra is dryness. Vritra, the word Vritra means drought, absence of rain. Ushana is a reverse of Tushna. Tushna means dryness. Ushana means wetness. So he takes the cows. Indra wins the cows. Ushana takes the cows. Now, we have to understand that Rig Veda is not just a series of mantras, but you have to understand them. And very interesting exposition done by one of the acharyas of Badrikashram. He takes this particular shloka and he says, when Indra wins against the cows, wins against Vritra, is basically winning the cows means bringing the senses under control. And Ushanas takes them and takes the senses upward, Swarga being upward, right? Which means you ascend with your senses. You use the senses to ascend. Now, from that perspective, Shukracharya can be fitted into this entire thing, right? It's a force fit. Let me put it very bluntly. It is a force fit. But it can be fitted. Why? Because Shukracharya is the guru of the Daityas. He is the guru of the Danavas. He is the guru of the those who are basically against the Devas. Now, what is the whole purpose of Devas? Devas is distribution, right? Whereas distribution of Lakshmi. What do Daityas and Danavas do? Me, mine. That is the basic fight, right? Me, mine. They give it to me, I will want it. I will take it. This is mine. I will not let it go. Worship me, Hiranyakashipu says. Hiranyaksha says, this earth is mine. So these are the Daityas, these are the Danavas. Now, so therefore, being a guru to these people means that you not only have to be extremely learned, but you also have to be able to have the ability to take them from that me-mindness to a higher level. For that, it requires essentially great amount of power. It requires essentially great amount of creativity. And that is why Ushanas or Shukracharya is a vibhuti of the Lord. Right? Then we move on to the next shloka. Shloka number 38. Dando damaitam asmi nitirasmi jigishitam. Dando damaitam asmi nitirasmi jigishitam. Maunam chaivasmi guhyanam. Maunam chaivasmi guhyanam. Jnanam jnanavatamaham. Jnanam jnanavatamaham. Maunam chaivasmi guhyanam. Jnanam jnanavatamaham. Dando damaitam asmi nitirasmi jigishitam. Maunam chaivasmi guhyanam. Jnanam jnanavatamaham. I have to admit here that I have a slight deviation from Gurudev's interpretation of this particular shloka at the first two words especially. Dando, he has interpreted this as the symbol of power. Danda, scepter, right? The danda that is held by the king. When the king sits in power, he holds a danda. It symbolizes his power to be able to rule. So he says, and damaitam here means Dhamma, the word Dhamma is to control. Right? We have seen that earlier. Shama, Dhamma, etc., etc. Shat Sampat. So in that, Dhamma means to be able to control. My slight interpretation here, variation is, I mean, it's not too off from whatever Gurudev has said, but Danda here, directly, literal meaning is punishment. Literal meaning is nothing but punishment. So, Damayatam means those who control, of that which has the power to control. And of that which has the power to control, I am punishment. Not the danda in the form of the scepter, but I am punishment. Now you look at Kenneth Blanchard in a book called 1 Minute Manager. And what does he say? 1 minute punishment. Punishment is also 1 minute. Reward is what? 1 minute. Correct? We are saying that today. Controlling punishment is a tool. So we call it in the corporate parlance, what do we call it? We call it carrot and stick. Correct? Carrot and stick. The stick is also important. So what is the stick? The stick is danda. Right? The danda could take any form. It could take scolding, it could take beating, it could take punishment, it could take words, whatever. That punishment given without the intent of self-glorification, but for the betterment of somebody else, which means out of love. That punishment is called danda. Punishment that has been given because I feel that I am greater is not called danda, it is called himsa. Danda does not involve himsa. Danda is not done out of the intent to harm. It is done with the intent to improve. Right? Yes, Raghuji.
Yeah, so I just felt, see, in terms of motivation, when you talk about the carrot and stick, which is a better motivator? Our normal tendency is to avoid hurt. Much more than seek pleasure, our innate tendency is to avoid hurt. We want to avoid the misery. So, of the means of controlling, punishment is more effective than the carrot.
Yes, okay, we're not getting into management theories, but if the stick is used too much, then you will find that that place where you are keeping on sticking will become so hard that it will not have any effect, right? So, I mean, both are necessary. Both are necessary. And the whole management theory of today has moved from any generalization to saying courses for horses, which means you have to look at the person and individualize your approach in leadership towards that particular individual, which means you may use somebody you may use more stick, somebody you may use more carrot. But what very clearly is important is, of all sticks that can be used, punishment is the stick which makes things happen. Controller, right? One is a controller. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. That is also control. Reins of a horse are also control. The whip is also control. Right? So of the controllers, I am danda. Nitirasmi jigishitam. Now very beautiful here. Of those who are looking for victory, ethics. Another meaning of niti, one direct meaning is called ethics. But another meaning of niti, if you go to the Monier-Williams dictionary, you will see that the word niti has been also read as that which is called political science or diplomacy. Diplomacy. Now, of all, if I want victory, then that victory, either it is like Alexander the Great Fool, right? He ran from all the way from Macedonia right up to the Indus. And then he died. He turned back, went to Persia, and died. Right? Nothing that he conquered stayed with him. For that matter, after he died, his entire empire broke up into small parts and they all kept fighting with each other. Now, this is one way of conquest. There is another way of conquest. Raja Chola went all the way up to Bali, the kingdom of Bali. Possibly about, 1,000 years ago? Today also, if you go to Bali, which is a Muslim country, the people are Hindus. Now, who is the better conqueror? He who leaves his mark over posterity is a better conqueror than anybody who has just come, done some doom, and gone. For that matter, if you look at any Indian history written by an Indian, not in the modern times, I'm talking of that time, there is no mention of Kuru. There is no mention of Alexander. He was an inconsequential battle at the banks of the Indus in some small blip in the history of India. It is Western world which is looking at him and saying, oh, 16-year-old ran all the way up to till he was 32 years old. Who is a better conqueror? A conqueror is he who conquers the hearts. And if I can conquer the heart, how do I conquer the heart? Through diplomacy, through statecraft, through ethics, through ethical behavior. And hence he says, those who desire victory, jigishitam, those who are victorious, I am niti, I am statecraft, I am diplomacy, I am ethical behavior. Very powerful. Maunam chaivasmi guhyanam. This is so very obvious, right? If you want to keep a secret, then keep it. Be silent. If you tell one more person, then it is no longer a secret. And if you tell 3 people, then you might as well publish it in the Times of India. So, what is the best way to keep a secret? Keep silent. Now, unfortunately, so goes the Loka Katha, and please don't take any gender exception to this. I am not saying this. So, it is said that women cannot keep secrets. And there is a reason being put to that. It is not there in the Mahabharata. It is a Loka Katha. The Loka Katha is that at the end of the battlefield, Karna's fire was burning and no rituals were done. So Kunti went to Yudhishthira and said, please do the rituals. Right? Ye sab Mahabharata mein hai. So he says, go ahead and do the rituals. Kyo karna hai? He was your elder brother. Now, the twist in the tale here, outside the Mahabharata, is so Yudhishthira got angry at Kunti and said, you kept such a big important thing as a secret from me. I curse all women that they will never be able to keep a secret. Right? Now, I am not sure whether that is really true or not. But not the inability to keep a secret is now called a feminine trait rather than being calling it all to women. I would call it a feminine trait rather than a masculine trait. That's how I will look at it, more from an internal perspective rather than external perspective. So, what is it that keeps a secret? Just keep it to yourself. तो एक क्या हुआ कि एक राजा था, तो वो एक बार जंगल में गया and he did urination in a pond. Now, you're not supposed to urinate inside a pond. It is against the Shastra. So when he did urination in a pond, the Yaksha who was controlling that pond, he got angry and he cursed the king that your ears will become long like a donkey. Now the king got very upset, but he couldn't do anything about it. So he started wearing a pagdi so that his ears would be covered. But he had to take his pagdi off for the barber. So when the barber came, he told the barber, look, I am going to open my pagdi, but you should not tell anybody. So he opened the pagdi and the big ears came. The barber was shocked. Kya karenge iska? But he had to keep quiet. Now he cut the hair, he shaved off everything, he put the pagdi back, and now he has this secret. And unfortunately, he has to talk, right? If you have ever been to a traditional barber shop, they always keep talking, gossiping about all the things, right? So usko gossip karna hai. Ab magar ye bol bhi nahi sak raha hai. To uska pet phul gaya. So abhi kya karega? So he went into the jungle, he found an old tree. In the tree there was a small hole. He went and told the hole. राजा का गधे का कान, राजा का गधे का कान, राजा का गधे का कान बोल के पेट छोटा हो गया. क्या शांति, किसी को तो बोल दिया, वापस आ गया. अभी उधर के जो लोग थे, उन लोगों ने इस पेड़ को काट के ड्रम बनाया, और जब ड्रम बजाया तो ड्रम बोलने लगा, राजा को गधे का कान, राजा को गधे का कान. मॉरल ऑफ द स्टोरी, पेड़ को भी बोल के आओ तो भी सीक्रेट नहीं रहेगा. मौनम is the power of being silent. Power. It requires self-control. It requires the ability to be able to say, oh, this I have digested. This I have digested. Like Ganesha, big ears, listens to everything. Small mouth, doesn't speak, swallows everything up. Big stomach. He can swallow and digest everything. Maunam chaivasmi guhyanam. And of all the knowledgeable people, I am the power of knowledge. I am knowledge itself. I am that which brings knowledge into existence. So we'll stop here for today. We have 4 more shlokas to go in this particular chapter, which we will finish next class. And after that, I think we have postponed our quiz for a very long time. So we should do some revision for some time. 1 or 2 classes, we should do some revision. Either in the form of quiz or in the form of discussions, we'll decide. Right? Chaliye. Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.